start. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is, how sweet it is,
How sweet it is
to be together on this day. How good it is,
How good it is
how sweet it is,
How sweet it is
to be together on this day. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is,
How good it is
how sweet it is,
How sweet it is
to be together on this day. How good it is,
How good it is
how sweet it is,
How sweet it is
to be together on this day. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum.
Cantor, when I hear that, there's
Yes.
one thing I think about, our summer services, right?
Oh yeah, well,
I
you
do
can feel it
joke,
in the air.
but Bruce was gonna make a joke that we should have been outside, right? Definitely not a shivering Shabbat. Our poor officer at the front, he had only his winter gear on. He told me his summer stuff is in his locker. They're not used to having to switch right now. Let's take a nice deep breath of Shabbat air. How beautiful, how good it is to be together. We have a wonderful service tonight. I'm going to invite Bruce to say welcome home to all of you.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome home. Admit it, you were expecting an email today that said park and pray, right? You were expecting us to be... I talked to the clergy, and they said we can't be out, it's too nice for us to be outside tonight. If we're outside tonight, as the weather deteriorates again, which it's going to, everyone's gonna be like, oh, now we really, really miss being outside. So we'll be ready when we're ready to be outside. Coming up, it's not that far away. But what a bonus day today is in April. But that's okay. It's nice to be together inside and enjoying Shabbat with each other. As the rabbi mentioned, there's some special stuff planned for tonight's service. It's a very important weekend for us in the Jewish community, and they'll be discussing that. And then I'll be back later with announcements. There's all sorts of good stuff coming up, including Shavuos, fast approaching.
I thought you were going to say pickleball.
Say what?
I thought you were going to say pickleball.
Oh, pickleball is a constant now. Shavuos, by the way, 80 degrees today. It will be 40 when I'm out there in the parking lot for Shavuot on Tuesday. And
Yeah.
snow.
When Bruce made the announcement last week, I thought, should I tell him it's going to be bad weather? Just get used to it. As soon as you say Shabbat,
Yeah, boom, the weather
just put
changes.
bad weather.
Anyway, again, it's nice to be together. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together like this. Shabbat Shalom.
Let's turn to page 126, and we'll read together a prayer that I think is perfect for tonight. 126. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no services. but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. The prayer itself is an answer to a question, which I love. There's actually a couple of questions here. One, why do we pray? And the poet decided to go into that. We pray not just only for God, but for all of us as well, for our own well-being. And what does it mean to love God? All these kind of things that are kind of hang over our service. As we come together, look around at our beautiful group here tonight. Each one of you is individual, even if you're family members. Each of you is unique. Each of you comes to prayer and might have a different definition of both what prayer is and what it means to love God, or what it means to be human in this world. And that's okay. Being together, putting our voices together, they combine, they mesh, and we become one, even in our different places. We're going to sing to that with Shalom Aleichem, which is on page 142. 142. This is our prayer where we wish each other and we wish Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome here.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei HaMalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boker Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Baruch nida shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon, mimelech malachei hamalachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Sitchem shalom, malachei shalom, malachei
Let's turn to page 120 to light our candles. In addition to our Shabbat candles, I put a Yizkor candle out there as well. That's in commemoration of Yom HaShoah coming up on Sunday. I'd like to actually invite an unlikely pair. I see Chris and Al there. Would you like to join us? You look so joyful there. I know you're all the way over there, but could you come over? And look at their beautiful kippot, too. This is true synagogue bonding. I miss back in the old days, Julia and Chris used to do the announcement. They had a whole shtick, I remember. Did you ever hear them?
Yes,
you
I
heard them,
did.
Yeah. I did test out the matches, so they do work.
Don't breathe on them, Al. Don't breathe on them.
And I was afraid of that. I got all 7 of them there with one match. If you'd like also to light the Yizkor candle also. And Chris, right in the, if you want to light the blue in the middle there. You can tell he's a scientist there.
Oh, it's too low. Yeah, this is a science experiment.
I didn't realize how much candlelighting was it looks like that one candle's about to fall, so
Yeah,
just be
that
careful.
one was fun.
I didn't know it was such a participated act. Do you want to lead us in the prayer, or do you want Cantor to do it? Go for it. Ta Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlikner shel Shabbat. Let the lights for Shabbat light our way through this Shabbat. We'll turn to the Kiddush, page 123. If one of you could lift the cup there, and I'll invite Cantor up to recite the prayer. 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, bo'ei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchilanu sikarbo l'maseh v'reshit ki hu yom tekilah l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher u'zion Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'yaltanu kiddashta mikol ha'amim v'shavat kodshecha be'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. We always have to wait to see if they still survive this. Okay. Is it good? Manischewitz. No, I think it's similar. Thank you. Yesher koach. You guys are good. Well, I definitely know I'm going to bring them up again. That was wonderful. Let us welcome Shabbat into the room with L'chado D on page 138. We'll sing the first and the last verse. On the last verse, we rise and we face the doorway here, bowing as Shabbat enters into the room, and then welcome each other by waving.
Lechadodi likrakala yalalai 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 Fene Shabbat nekabela Lechadodi likrakala yalalai 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 Fene Shabbat nekabela Shamo v'sachar dibor b'chad Hishrianu elam yuchad Adonai echad Shmo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litchila Lechadodi likrakala yalalai 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 B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lechadodi likrakala yalalai 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 B'nei Shabbat nekabela Bori v'shalom atem Shamba. One more time. Here we go. Lecha dodi, likrakala, yalala, 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 v'neshama nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrakala, yalala, 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 v'neshama nekabela.
Page 145 below the line, we remain standing. And we're going to read, there's no line there, at the very bottom of the page, I mean. We're going to read this. It reminds me of the tabernacle. We're in the section of Leviticus. We've moved, now that we're done with Passover, we've gone past the Exodus, and now we're traveling through with our traveling tabernacle. A reminder that God is everywhere. That's why, one of the reasons why they took their synagogue with them, because they wouldn't think God was only here. Wherever they went, God was there. So let's read together. Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time. Even at unlikely times and through unlikely places, there is no place on earth without the presence. Page 146, our call of community. We remain standing, page 148. Please join with me in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chochma poteach sharim utfuna mishaneh itim umachalif et azmanim umisader et hakokavim b'mishmarateim berkia kirtzono borea yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshek v'choshek mipnei or umavir yom umevi layla Umavdil ben yom uben laila Adonai Svaot Shemo El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Li'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai Hamariv Aravim. And we'll continue with the Shema, page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
You may be seated at the top of page 154.
Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol me'otecha, ve'hayu advarim ha'ele, asher Elohim mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinanta levanecha, v'dibarta v'shivtecha v'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'v'shoktecha v'v'kumecha v'kshartam le'ot hayadecha v'hayu letotava b'einenecha וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 157. Let's read responsibly at the bottom. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth together. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered at Sinai. We bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by stages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our Lord, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be the one and at peace. Then we shall rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. I feel like that's the perfect reading for after Passover. So page 158 at the top, Mi Chamocha, and it will not be Adir Hu.
Mi kama kapa di Madonna, mi kama kanera bakona, norate hilo osefele, norate hilo osefele. Yalala, everybody. Yalala, yalala, Adonai Yaakov, Elohim Adonai Mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, God Israel.
I invite you to rise, page 164, and we're going to have our silent meditation till page 180. Feel free to read the Hebrew, English, your own private prayers, and whenever you're ready, you may be seated. continue with Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace, page 180.
Oseh Shalom, Shalom Ibrahim, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'akol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Amen. Oseh Shalom, Shalom B'Brahma, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Ve'akol Yisrael Amen.
Beautiful. We'll turn to the Misha Berach prayer, page 371, our prayer for healing. I'm going to read our list of names, and afterwards I'll go around to the congregation, and if you have other names you'd like, just raise your hand. As a community, we are thinking and sending our prayers to Marge Abelson, Gary Bernstein, Jim Bukowski, Richard Zyback, Paula Charvella, Dennis Epstein, Murray Edinger, Carol Fisher, Sue Frank, Ida Frost, Maureen Furlong, Freda Goodstein, Dick and Kathy Gordon, Esther Green, Karen and Gary Greenfield, Carolyn and Ernest Grosser, Heather Houston, Charlotte Krebs, Ruth Lansing, Miles Levy, Savannah Lucas, Rick Mahler, Megan McEvoy, Jill Shire Monahan, Robert Posis, Aidan Raccoon, Karen Rosenfield, Cheryl Rossi, Brandon Ryan, Gertrude Sloan, Alan Strauss, Jim Terabasi, Robin Weinstein, Mike Wheeler, Bat Ami Bat Shulamit, Yocheved Bat Esther, Miriam Bat Razel, Avraham Ben Rivka, Chana Ezra Ben Shuel, and Ruvain Ben Morris. If we have other names, just raise your hand.
Nicholas Tepper, Marcia Tepper, Warren Post. Alicia Steinfeld, Liz Spina. Nikki Jazarowski, Kathy Murdukin.
Elliot Goldstein and Joni Simon.
Marsha Isaacs. Milton Camheim, Michelle Kornberg, Keith Lewis.
Paul and Jerry Jean.
We'll collect all those names into our heart as we sing Misha Berach, page 371.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Nisheberbach imotenu bekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal
complete healing of body and soul. May all of our prayers go out to where it's needed, and may those individuals feel stronger and feel our presence, that we're sending support their way. I figure if I come down here, I'm a little closer to you. All right, here's a show of whether you are a true Buffalonian or not. And we'll see. How many of you thought today was too hot? My youngest got off the bus and said, I don't even want to play outside. It's like it's 81 degrees. It's hot, but this is not Florida weather. It's still relatively pleasant. So those of you that raised your hands, great for you. Everyone else, well, you'll be very comfortable in Florida then. Arizona, yeah, that works too. I've been admiring our Shiva or Yisker candle that we have here. This is a Shiva candle that you have on the table right over here on my right. That is meant to count time. The size of the candle, other than these Shabbat, these aren't traditional Shabbat candles. A traditional Shabbat candle is meant to go for about 90 minutes or so, maybe up to 3 hours, but that's so you could eat dinner in light. And Hanukkah candles go about 45 minutes so you don't burn down the house. And the Shiva candle is meant to be a timer so that when the family comes home after a funeral and they light the Shiva candle, it lasts for approximately 7 days, give or take a little wax. I always wonder, I was in Israel, and when in these Catholic services, when they light the candles, they're all even. I don't know how they do it. They all look perfectly. Whenever I light candles, one looks like this, one looks like that, but every single one of them. I asked someone, I think it had to do with the wick and the size of the candle, but Walter probably knows. It's a scientific thing. So this Sunday, we have our Yom HaShoah commemoration. It's down at Temple Beth Zion at noon. It's very meaningful. We've been online video recording the last few years, and Brenda Feldman has done a beautiful job recording. I've been part of them. Cantor has been part of them. But it's very different being together and being able to celebrate, memorialize together. I think Yom HaShoah in our community is one of the most beautiful ceremonies we have. It's always very meaningful for me. I remember when I first got here, we used to do it at the Jewish Community Center, back when the Jewish Community Center was a lot bigger than it is now. Sometimes I think they had upwards of 1,000 people in attendance even 15 years ago. Now we tend to be a little smaller than that, but it's still a collection, a lot of people who survived the Holocaust, but also their families. And we still, we're very lucky here in Western New York, we still have a number of survivors with very heroic stories. I know I'm always amazed, and I feel a lot of reverence anytime I'm with survivors, particularly when I know their stories. And it's quite amazing, the collection of real heroes that we have in our community. I want to share a little bit about Yom HaShoah, put it in context, and also how we think about the Holocaust, because the essence of how the Jewish community responded to the Holocaust actually is shaped by Yom HaShoah. So, a couple of questions for you. This is the 75th anniversary in just a couple of weeks of Israel. It's hard to believe, 75 years, 3/4 of a century. Those of you in this room who are that old, you remember the beginning, maybe before that even. It's nice. Israel is now, I guess, a senior citizen at this point, which is something for those of us who have seen it grow and learn and watched it as a young country. It's kind of amazing. It's an established country in the world with one of the top economies in the world. It's something that we never could have imagined. But of course, Israel was founded in 1948, and 1948 was just a few years removed from the worst event in Jewish history. I would say, outside of maybe some events 2,000 years ago, the Holocaust would rate as the absolute worst event that ever happened to the Jewish people. But in Israel, it was complicated in 1948. It was complicated in Western New York as well. Let me see. So I said I was going to ask some questions. How many of you think you know, when was Yom HaShoah established? What year? Would you say 1946, 1947, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52? I think it was 51. So we're a little more than, 72 years of Yom HaShoah. It was one of the initial things that they put together. And right after that, 2 years later, we have the start of Yad Vashem. These were one of the things that they wanted to do. There actually is an older memorial, I think, in the north that was right as the state was founded. But Israel at that time didn't really think of the Holocaust in the way that we think about the Holocaust. Those of you that lived through these times, particularly in America, even in the 50s and 60s and 70s, maybe you kind of have a sense of that, and we have some residual effects of that today. So in 1948 or 1951, in Israel, they considered the Holocaust to be a terrible event that the people kind of let happen to them. There was a sense of guilt. We met with a superb educator when I was in Israel. Her name is Rachel. She said, don't ever call her Rachel. Rachel Korazin. And she's an expert in poetry, in Hebrew poetry, and also Holocaust. And her mother was a survivor who came over, in the 42, 43, before the state was established. And she tells a story how when she came to Israel and they brought her to a kibbutz, on that very first night, one of the kibbutzniks said, how could you let this have happened? There was a sense among those early survivors and amongst the Jewish community of a shanda, an embarrassment. Nothing the way that we think of that today. It was so bad you could not even really talk about it. There's a story here in Buffalo. I think it's one of the conservative synagogues. I lose track because as they merged and became Beth Tzedek, I forget all the iterations. But one of them, the rabbi stood up, I think in the 60s, and said, we're going to have a special mourner's Kaddish Yatom, for Holocaust survivors. And he did that because no one was memorializing them. It was sense of, we want to move past that. You can see this in a lot of different ways, actually, in Israel, the type of Hebrew that's spoken. You might be surprised. It's a very specific choice that filtered its way into our religious school settings. It is not Ashkenazi Hebrew. Ashkenazi Hebrew, for those of you, Ashkenazi is the European Jewry. That's Yiddish and Hebrew. Ashkenazi Hebrew, the ta sound sometimes sounds a little bit different. The sounds of the Sephardic are very hard sounds, and they're very specific. And why Sephardic? Because they were trying to move away from that feeling of Ashkenazi, this feeling of what it was like. They wanted a new Judaism, a Judaism that was disconnected from it. So one of the things when I was with Rachel Korazin, she talked about how Yad Vashem is the Holocaust Memorial Museum. It's one of the hardest spaces to walk in. It reminds me of the purpose of museums. Sometimes today, and with when our kids were younger, going to the Science Museum, it's a fun day. You go to museums to have fun, maybe you see a little artwork, but museums can have a very powerful impact. And Yad Vashem is one of the hardest museums to walk into, because when you walk out of that, I know, and I've now been part of 5 groups that have gone through Yad Vashem, and I'm taking people mostly that haven't been there before. And it is devastating. I think, Cantor, you must have gone, when the Buffalo community trip, 70, was that the 70th anniversary? No, it was not too long ago. That trip went. How many of you have been to Yad Vashem here? So Yad Vashem, Rachel was describing, has two different separate histories. The first history is that feeling from the early state of let us get away from that history. The only purpose of telling the Holocaust story is that it leads to the story of Israel. And everything in it was designed to celebrate the partisans and to move to Israel. Holocaust was what gave us Israel. That's how the Zionists, and that's how they imagined the museum. I actually was at that early iteration in the 90s, and it was a very different type of museum. You came out and you saw the memorial to all of the heroes, the Warsaw Ghetto. And if you think about Yom HaShoah itself, we have two major Holocaust memorials, one that we mostly commemorate here and one that's international. We share the one with Israel, which is Yom HaShoah, and the other is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is January 27th. One celebrates the liberation of Auschwitz, that's January 27th. What date did they pick? What is Yom HaShoah? What is that date there? It's on the Hebrew calendar, but do you know what happened? What would be the date if they're thinking of all the people who fought back against the Nazis? What date did they pick? The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So they picked the most heroic, these beaten down population in Warsaw that fought back and surprised the Nazis and pushed back. That is where they put the energy, and that's why it's here at this time. It's also at this time because it's right before Yom HaAtzmaut. So it is lined up in the calendar between, first you have Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, the Memorial Day, and a week later we have Yom HaAtzmaut. And the whole idea is to move from degradation, sort of like Passover, to freedom, from slavery to freedom. And that is the essence. So Rachel asked us, because those of you that toured Yad Vashem, you probably went to the newer version of it, which is from 2005. So she asked us, how did we get to the newer one? What's the timing of it? She said, when did they start thinking that this museum that we built, that's really about Israel and not about the Holocaust, that makes people that went through the Holocaust feel guilty, when would they have decided that we can't tolerate this anymore? We need a new museum that's going to really memorialize and celebrate the lives of the people who lived and died in this terrible time. So what did she say? Think about it. It's not in that first generation, the Holocaust survivors.
Survivors started dying off.
It's not the survivors dying off. It's the survivors' children. The survivors' children becoming adults. And when they became adults, they looked at this museum, they looked at their parents. This is in the 90s, 80s and 90s, and they said, you don't need, Mom, this is what Rachel said to her mother, you don't need to feel guilty about this time anymore. We don't need to approach it. You did the best you could. You got us out. You survived. We are blessing. You shouldn't look at this as a guilt. Why didn't I do more? Why couldn't I have been better? Why couldn't I have fought back? Just being alive in these times is fighting back. And even, for the people that died, they weren't willingly going to death they weren't like lambs to death. They were against an oppressive regime with guns and military. It was not something that anyone could easily fight back. The Nazis knew what they were doing in this process. So she said once her generation, that second generation, they said they have enough. And then it takes another 20 years before you have a museum, because you need to plan it out and you need to come up with the right response. And the response that they have now, if you've been there, it actually takes you from what Europe used to be. They show you the pictures of how vibrant. There's a beautifully moving video when you walk into the main memorial hall, where you see life in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And it's old video reels that are pieced together. You have famous people like Albert Einstein on there, various famous Jews that are part of it, and it goes through. It's about a 3-4 minute loop. You can actually see it online. I encourage you to look at it. But the idea is you come through. You first learn, you're going through different periods. First you learn about who these people were. You see what the Nazis did in the process. You get to the point where you have the final solution that in 1942, and actually that's the last time you hear about Hitler, and it keeps going until you finally get out, and it actually ends looking out into Jerusalem. So you're supposed to come through this terrible period feeling life at the end. The most beautiful part about it is the Hall of Names, and I completely lost it this year, I have to say. When you come out, at the very end of the museum is a room, and they were committed to writing every single name that and it looks, there in the center, there's a well that you can look down and see reflections, and along the sides, you have binders, like an office binders almost, all around. It's not filled. Believe it or not, we don't have every single name. It was a lot to collect. You remember whole cities were destroyed, the records are destroyed. We have a lot. And there's millions of names that are there, but there's actually still a huge section, and they're still collecting names. Being in that room, and they have pictures of a lot of different survivors, so you can see also how they're doing. You're reminded of the life that they lived, not just their death. As we come here in our community, I think it's very important that we have here at Shir Shalom, we have our broken star. I actually don't know the history fully about this. Bruce probably can tell me, but this, I do believe, is out of that sense of guilt that had seeped in, and the synagogues were starting to say, we're not going to have that anymore. The newer rabbis that came in, that were that next generation, just like they created Yad Vashem, they were the ones that said, no, we need to tell this story differently. We need to have it physically part of our worship spaces and part of our ritual life and part of our lives. And we need to celebrate these people as we come through. It's so interesting as we think of the evolution of anything that happens. History changes. The way we perceive history changes. I feel so lucky to have witnessed in my lifetime that we can fully look at our survivors as heroes. And that's a real transformation that we've had. And we'll celebrate them on Sunday. It's a important moment for us as the survivors are starting to get older and they're already older, but start no longer able to either share their stories. This one is dedicated to the next generation, which I think is very appropriate and very beautiful. And those are the generation that supported their families and made sure that the stories got told right. So may all their memories be for a blessing. I feel like I'm schwitzing here. Okay.
Yes.
It is hot in here, right? I was going to look at Joanne. Can we get a little cooler? Or is it? Thanks. I was looking around for her. All right, let's rise for Aleinu, and we'll conclude our service at the end with Eli Eli. But let's rise for Aleinu, page 586. And Naomi, please come on. Sorry about that, Kent. All right, you do it yourself.
עלינו לשבח ולטעון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו בהם, וכל אבינו ככל המונם, אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומורדים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 591.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא לאדוני אחד, ושמו
You may be seated. We'll turn to our Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. And we are remembering, first of all, we had a loss, Marlene Joseph, and our thoughts and prayers go with Gary and Beth Joseph. May their mom's memory be for a blessing. On our Shloshim list of this past month, we remember Glorian Curtis, Aaron Munter, Jane Peck, and Cameron Stokes. On our yard-site list from years past, we remember Sylvia Berger, Harvey Chazen, Albert L. Cohen, Daniel Morris Cohen, Norbert J. Dunn Sr., Louis Fink, Mary Friedman, Jean Fry, Victoria Gambitsky, Alexandra Gerstel, Lillian Golden, Leonard Goodman, Rose Gordon Hirschhorn, Donald Horwitz, Lillian Hurwitz, Hila Kaminsky, Harry Karch, Saul Kaufman, Mary Kerman, Lena R. Koren, Shirley Kornblatt, Samuel Korris, Henry Lansing, Dr. Alfred Liederman, Russell Lewis, Tilly Malnikoff, Yetta Mandelkern, Kel Moore, Abraham Nosenchuk, Maurice Oskowitz, Sidney L. Oskowitz, Edward Reese, Dorothy Ricken, Joyce Rubin, Julian R. Sapphire, Max Savatsky, Belle Vera Shanin, Harry Starr, Harry Tubin, Esther Turk, Fred Vogel, and Deborah A. Zimmerman. If you have other names you'd like to offer, just raise your hand. All those whose custom it is to rise, page 598. Yitgadal, v'yitkadash, shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hirte, v'yamlik malchute, v'chayachon, v'yamachon, v'chayed echol beit Yisrael, b'agalav v'yizman kariv, v'yamaru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei maya, yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei dekudusha b'rechu. Le'la min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, damiran bi'alma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlamar abba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. O says shalom v'yimarumav, Huya says shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yal kol yoshvei tevel v'yimaru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world. We say amen. You may be seated. Zikranam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing. I'd like to invite Bruce Corris up again to offer the announcements.
Shabbat Shalom again. Thank you to Mark Nightinger and Sue Frank for being our service greeters tonight. We had the A-team. It's always nice to have them. Thank you to Rabbi Alex Cantor-Frank and Nick Stelzer for very meaningful service tonight in honor of Shabbat and Holocaust Remembrance Day. So the rabbi mentioned that the community Yom HaShoah observance is Sunday. It is at noon. It's down at Temple Beth Zion, Delaware Avenue building. It's always a very, very powerful event. Back before we went virtual a couple of years ago, I was on that committee for a few years, and it's a very powerful thing to be part of. And I don't know if you've read this, Rabbi, but this week the last surviving Nuremberg prosecutor died. Ben Ferencz, he was 103. The last surviving Nuremberg prosecutor passed away this past week. And every year we lose more of the Holocaust survivors. One of them, Sophia, I can't think of it. Pfeffer is going to be one of the candle lighters this Sunday. So are the Kester family. They'll be lighting one of the candles as well. But Sophia has been on that committee for many, many years and is obviously still very, very active at age 98, I think. I believe. Anyway, but we lose more Holocaust survivors every year. And it's important that the stories continue to be told. So Sunday at noon, downtown at Beth Zion. Our virtual offering tomorrow is Torah study at 9 a.m. That's via Zoom. The Shabbat morning service will be at 10:45 over at Temple Beth Zedek. Community Religious School is back this Sunday. The kids are back from spring break at Daytona and Cancun and all of that. They're tan, they're rested, they're ready, they're rowdy. They're ready to resume religious school. That's this Sunday at 9 o'clock, I believe?
Yes.
9 o'clock. And that's here, of course, at the Shir Shalom building. This Tuesday, our next Shavetas, from 4 till 7 or till sold out. If you pre-order on the website, you are guaranteed of getting one and you save $1. And so if you're there, first of all, thank you to everyone that volunteers for Shavetas. It is a very important fundraiser for us. Thank you to everyone that supports Shavetas. And look for me in the parking lot when it will be 40 degrees on Tuesday. 80 today, 40 on Tuesday.
It's like God's air conditioning.
Yeah, he's laughing at me. All this month, our Tikkun Alum Committee is collecting food and personal item donations for the Amherst Little Free Pantry. That's a project of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Havara. Please bring a donation anytime you come to Temple. Help us fill the bin to the rim. There are collection bins and baskets here in the lobby near the coat room and down by the religious school. Buffalo Corner Reading Series returns this Thursday, April 20th at 7 p.m. This month is Open Community Poetry Reading in honor of National Poetry Month. This will be in person and via Zoom, Boxcast, Facebook, and YouTube. Then next Saturday, Earth Day, April 22nd, that's the community observation is from 2 to 5. That's also at the TBZ's Delaware building. This year the theme is Healing, Resilience, and Renewal. The CSS band and singers, led by the cantor, will be participating in a service at around 4 o'clock p.m. There's information on the website. But yet again, that is Saturday the 22nd from 2 to 5 down at the Delaware Avenue TBZ building. Many, many more upcoming events. Yes, ma'am.
Tomorrow is
Game night.
Tomorrow is game night.
not too late to let me know if you want to come.
I thought it was last week. Sorry about that.
And May 12th is the Women of Shir Shalom Shabbat, and if any women are members of the Women of Shir Shalom want to participate, please let me know.
Game night tomorrow night. Talk to Jill. Julia will be leading poker games. Do not play with Julia. She is a shark, but you'll still enjoy yourself. So as Jill said, it's not too late still to sign up, so you can be here tomorrow night for game night. And then May 12th is the Women of Shir Shalom service, the Shabbat service, which is always a lovely service. Rabbi gets the night off. The Women of Shir Shalom lead it. It really is a very nice service. So that's May 12th.
And let me know if you want to be in.
Yeah, if you would like to be part of the service, talk to Jill about that. And
Next Friday night, we will be commemorating Earth Day here for a Blue Jean Shabbat.
oh, great! In honor of Earth
With
Day,
the band
wash your blue jeans
and
in cold water.
singers.
The
So that's
band-
I'm waiting for a flyer.
The band, the singers, Earth Day commemoration here 1 week.
Also.
1 week from tonight. Here's part of our Friday night service. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out to Rabbi Alex, Cantor Frank, Joanne Todd, or myself. We are always here for you. I want to read something. This is really, really nice. So please join us in the Oneg Shabbat, which is sponsored tonight by Shana Markman and John Priyazdaznik. Sorry if I screwed that up, John. This is what it says. This is not just, hey, we're sponsoring the Oneg because we like the temple. I want to read what they wrote. In honor of our appreciation for this synagogue, clergy, fellow congregants, and all of the people who work so hard behind the scenes to plan wonderful events and make this such a caring and spiritual community. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned what Charlene said to me at our party at Winterfest, that someone who is a member of the Jewish community, but not a member of our temple, referred to us, Congregation Shir Shalom, as the heart of the Jewish community of Western New York, which reinforces everything that we try to do here. And, you know, Victor and John, who are such active and wonderful members here, and have really, you've embraced this temple from the moment you came on board. For you to write that reinforces that as well. Thank you for everything that you do here, and thank you for making this temple as wonderful as it is. So join us in the Oneg, sponsored by them, for that really wonderful reason.
Be sure to say Mazel Tov, because they're recently engaged as well.
That's right. Wedding coming up, not soon, but soon enough. Getting there. So Shabbat Shalom, and thank you, as always, for being part of our wonderful Shir Shalom family.
I should also point out it's Ben Lieberman's bar mitzvah next week.
It is.
Yeah, right over there. He's big now. Not quite bigger than me yet. Yeah, that's true. We do also have a Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration that'll be next Sunday at the JCC. You can look. I'm not sure the whole details. I think it's at noon, though. All right, let's all rise for Eli, Eli. That's the words that are written on our Holocaust Broken Star. It's page 653. This is one of the anthems of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz Yavon. As you came in peace, may you leave in peace. Please return your prayer book. And Howard's got his leaflet out. That's perfect. With that, minus your leaflet to the front, and Shabbat Shalom.